Okay, we are live. This is Attorney Vince Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm joined by my two co-hosts this evening. First one from Orange County, California, Miss Deidre Payne. Miss Payne has a very unique virtual background. It looks like a car. How are you, Miss Payne?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. It's always good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mr. Davis.
So what's happening in the OC today?
Nothing. It's too hot. That's all I have to say.
Is that real makeup you're wearing?
Real makeup.
Well, they have that touch-up assistant now behind there too, I've noticed. So I didn't know if there was that or if you really got the makeup on.
Oh, Lordy. Yes, it's makeup.
Well, I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Very nice.
Now we should move to sound and video and lighting?
Yes, sir.
Darren probably is sending me that email as we speak.
I'm doing it right now as we speak.
Okay. Hopefully it'll be before the second coming.
Yeah,
Well,
really.
at least before the rapture.
Okay, and I have our second co-host, the inimitable Mr. Darren Guy from the state of Maine.
Yes, sir. Home of duct tape and baling wire.
And you're all the way across the country.
1,700 miles from you, right?
So I hear they have CPS in Maine too. That's accurate?
Well, they have GHHS in Maine. They still don't call it CPS itself. But yeah, apparently they're just as evil, if not worse, as they are as you have on the West Coast.
Right.
Apparently they say here in Maine, we have way more abusive parents because we lead the country now in abuse and neglect. So yay for the state of Maine.
So we have a special guest tonight, Miss Maria Ann. Now, I'm not going to butcher your name. How do you pronounce that last name?
It's Ujoa.
Ujoa. I would have never gotten that.
Yeah, most people don't. The two L's make a Y or a J sound in Spanish, but most people pronounce it Uloa.
Ujoa.
Ujoa.
So 2 L's make a J.
We have a very skilled linguist on this panel, Mr. Guy from Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
What's the
sir.
word from last night, Mr.
Yes.
In,
Well, listen, so what I've learned
indigenous?
already tonight is 2 L's make a J, right?
Sometimes a Y. It depends on which Spanish-speaking country.
Wait a minute. So you got to know not only what the letters make, but what country it's from to get the proper sound.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my God, I'm so
Like
glad
I know
I'm from Maine.
in the Caribbean, or at least in Puerto Rico and in Dominican Republic, they pronounce it with a J, but in other countries it's pronounced with a Y, so they would pronounce it Uyoa.
Ooh,
Mr. Guy is pound woke on our
I woked it. They got me woked it up.
We learned that last night about him.
Yes, sir.
So Maria, where are you calling in from?
From Virginia.
Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What part of Virginia?
I'm in the Newport News, Hampton Roads area, not far from Virginia Beach, if you're familiar with that.
You know what? I am.
Okay.
A few years ago, I used to go to Richmond maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And occasionally I would go to Virginia Beach.
Yeah, it's actually pretty nice. Probably one of the few nice things we have out here. Besides Busch Gardens, we have a Busch Gardens not too far from here in Williamsburg.
Never went to Busch Gardens. But the last time I was there was when there was all of that hoopla about taking down all the Confederate statues on there's a street called Monument Row. And they were taking down all the statues. And, a funny thing, let me tell you a funny story. My father is African American. My mother's Japanese. And I went back there to visit a friend from Los Angeles who's African American. And during and this was way before the controversy of the statues came up. And he wanted to take me on a tour. And one of the things he took me on was a tour of Monument Avenue, where they had these fabulous statues of Confederate people famous in the Confederacy, right? Stonewall Jackson, I can't think of the names, Jeff Davis, Robert E. Lee, all these types of figures. And he was, bragging to me about Monument Row. And at the end of the tour, I said, Harry, I said, where I'm from, these are all war criminals. Why are you bragging about them? And he kind of looked at me like he never thought of that. But it was kind of a joke. And, anyway, just out of coincidence, like a year or two later, there was that big hoopla and they took down all those statues. I think they left one
Yeah,
up because the state actually owned one of the statues and all the rest of them the city owned. And, I don't know if you know anything about Richmond. Right now, it's, has a large population of African Americans. And, they weren't feeling the Confederate statues and they took them down. And it was amazing. And, I looked at it and I always thought, is that historical or is it, racial? It was, it's just hard to really come down on a side. And one of the things I think that wasn't
well, it's
going well
erasing
for
history, though.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that was that the statute people that were pro statute didn't have going for them was at that time, I don't know if he's still in power, Richmond had a black, an African American mayor. And of course, he was supported removing the statues. When I was there, I did talk to several people about CPS. And it was the same story, the same story I hear in Los Angeles or across, the country, people calling me all the time. And, it's just an unfair situation. There it was a little bit more, I got the impression that it was a little bit more cut and dry against the parents. It was like, screw you, we don't care if we're violating your rights. That's just what's going to happen, and you can like it or lump it.
Mm.
So what's happening to you with CPS there?
So I would agree with that from just not only my own experience, but when speaking with other parents that I've gotten to know, like I'm in a group online on Facebook of parents in my city and in my state that have been through similar situations. But I just think my case is completely unfair. One of the main things is feeling like they went way too prematurely to change the goal to adoption and subsequently terminate my rights. So I guess I'll kind of start from the beginning. My son was removed due to my mental health issues, and I was struggling with opiate addiction and stimulants. I'm proud to say that I am 16 months clean and sober today.
Yeah, good for you.
Thank
Good
you.
for you.
Congratulations.
It was a hard road, and I definitely struggled in the beginning. But at the time, I had a safety plan in place. I wish I would have known so much that I learned from watching you that I didn't have to really do any of that. But I thought if I just complied with them, did what they asked, sat pretty and did whatever they wanted, that nothing bad was going to happen. But they approved my mother to supervise my contact with my son. And so everything was fine there. She also had joint custody of him with me at the time. Unfortunately, she got really sick with COVID, and she ended up in the hospital for a month and a half. And during that time, I didn't have anybody else that could supervise me. So they ended up removing him from my care. So that was very difficult, but, and I struggled in the beginning. It was very hard. I was dealing with 2 comorbid addictions, like a lot of, mental health issues, my depression, anxiety, I had trauma. Unfortunately, shortly after my children's removal, because they removed both of my children, my sister actually passed away. It was a lot of compounding factors. I don't want to make excuses, but, and then my mother was in the hospital with COVID. So I was alone, it was really hard. So, but of course I know my kids, of course their best interest. So I understood why it was happening, but I just felt like there was zero compassion or understanding on my part. But, so it came to be that 7 months into my son being into custody, we had a family planning meeting and they told me they were going to be pursuing the goal of adoption and terminating my rights. I was blindsided. I was I thought I had a minimum of 12 months to really prove myself. And they said it was because I think at the time I had maybe 4 months clean They said it wasn't substantial or significant enough of a clean time. I was struggling to keep and be consistent and punctual with my visitation with my son. And according to them, I wasn't fully compliant with all my services. Even with that being said, I still don't think, like, I think at 7 months, like, that's just too early. Like, it was really premature. I was not in agreement with that, of course. And then after this, I'm not proud of it, but I ended up having a relapse. It lasted a week or so. I realized the error, huge error, and I feel like that probably a huge reason that led to the judge approving the goal change. But and of course they used that to their advantage along with their other accusations. But upon the goal change hearing, I feel like I still proved that I was making progress. I picked up where I left off. I stayed clean. I had 3 months under my belt. I was punctual, consistent with all of my visits. Like once they like brought up adoption, it was like it put a fire under me. I was like, you can't mess up. You're under a microscope. Like you just can't. You have to do what you got to do. So, and then all of them saying that I wasn't compliant with services. My lawyer did a pretty good job of like, refuting that. A lot of things were like my therapist. I wasn't seeing her 4 times a month. I was seeing her maybe 2 and 3 due to a scheduling conflict. Medication management, like the agency I was with was awful and hard to get a hold of, so they couldn't get compliance records. And I ended up following my worker to another agency, but in order to do so, had to get my insurance to approve it. So it wasn't like I wasn't like willing or able. It was just that it was just some like issues that were out of my control. And then it was, I had an appointment for a psychological evaluation. It takes a while to get those. And I was in medication management, but they wanted me to see a psychiatrist, not PCP. But I was getting the medicine, taking it while I was on the wait list. But somehow the judge still thought that, well, no, you're not being compliant. You're not trying hard enough. So he approved the goal. And shortly after the goal was changed, my visit stopped with my son, which I think was detrimental to my case, because then they're able to say he's spent such an amount of time away from you. There's no bond. He's bonded with the foster family. And that happened in November. What was that? Like 3 months after the goal change. And then my TPR trial. At my TPR trial, I felt like I continued that same progress and momentum. The first part of the hearing, I had 11 months clean and sober. The second, 14. I stayed clean, consistent with all my services, and all of my visits with my son up until they stopped them, I maintained all of them. And I was on time, never missed any. And I attended any doctor's appointments of his that I was able to make it to. I completed all the services in my plan and additional ones, took ABA therapy classes, like just everything I could think of, PR. Learned as much as I could about parenting a child with special needs to show my commitment. And even so, he still chose to terminate my rights, claiming that I was just too little too late.
Oh,
I'm in the appeals process now.
When you say he, do you mean the judge?
The judge, yes. I really think he had his mind made up from the very beginning, though. I don't think they were ever really going to give me a fair chance. I think that they very much were in favor of the foster parents. And what sucked in my case is that I felt like nobody was on my side, like not the family engagement specialist, the guardian ad litem, the judge, my son's social worker. Everybody would just seem to be completely like with this mindset that like I was a lost cause. The family engagement specialist even said to me at one point, she was like, let's be realistic, you're probably going to relapse again. That really like bothered me and like kind of took me aback a little bit. I felt like she was already like, writing me off as being a failure. Like I was being discarded. Like I had no redeeming qualities in me. There was no way I was ever going to be good enough for my son, even though I was doing everything that I could. And I thought that by going above and beyond and not doing the bare minimum, that was going to, make a difference in my case. Another thing is that like during my trial, the judge wanted to limit my progress and my efforts to only the 12 months, because that's the statute they used for terminating my rights, was that during that 12-month period, I didn't make a significant changes or efforts to rectify why he was brought into foster care. And I still disagree. I think that even during that time frame that I showed significant progress, and I feel like the progress I've made now, if they had really given me a fair chance and they had given me more time, they would have seen at the next permanency hearing, they would have been like, okay, she's made progress. Let's give her some more time. Next one, it would have been the same thing. And eventually reunification would have happened. But I felt like they just didn't give me a chance at all.
Do you have it up on appeal right now?
I do. It's
Do you have-
scary because I know that the statistics for that are not very good.
Right. Do you have a court-appointed attorney or a private attorney or what?
I have a court-appointed attorney.
And did you go through the case at the trial court with a court-appointed attorney?
Yes.
You know, I was going to mention something to you. I wrote a note in the private stand. So they've made a finding or determination that the progress that you made was not substantial. Is that what you said?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, I kind of had this argument recently in court. For someone to say that it's not substantial, there has to be a foundation, an expertise, and there has to be a history of the knowledge of your case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally, that person that says, oh, it's not substantial, just has the history. But the reason why they don't, the only thing they have the history to go on is because you and your attorney did not bring an expert witness that could testify that your progress was substantial.
Okay. We do have something we didn't do, which I this is a whole other thing I want to talk to you about. I wanted to do a consult later, by the way. She didn't bring in my subpoenas, the people that I wanted to be there that I thought could help me. She didn't subpoena them, like my what is he called? My peer recovery specialist, and also my drug therapist and counselor. I felt like that could have, those would be considered expert witnesses, right?
Not necessarily, but they could have been. But, sometimes they're just percipient witnesses that come in and say, oh, this is what I observed in Maria, blah, 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 blah. And then your attorney might want to sneak in an expert witness question, like based upon what you've seen, what's the prognosis for her recovery? Oh, 100%.
Okay, so I'm a
one
little
of
bit
those-
hopeful in that aspect because I do have my my mental health skill builder, my peer recovery specialist, and my drug therapy counselor. They're all going to be they're in the process of being subpoenaed, and they're going to be at my appeal. So I feel like that's at least something different. That's going to
Wait a minute. In California, and I think I talked to Darren about this in Maine, you can't bring in new evidence at an appeal. Are you telling me in Virginia you can?
yes. I've heard that you can't do that. Like if I was to appeal it to a higher court after this, but
Right.
I can't even do that unless it's based on a legal, like something legal, like the judge misinterpreted the law or something. Right now, this is being considered like a retrial almost.
Oh, so so you didn't have a real judge make this decision?
I
With some
did.
corporate-
They're calling it like it's like the way that my lawyer referred to it to me as it's like a retrial, like you're getting like a fresh start with a new judge at the circuit court to appeal the original district judge's decision.
Interesting. That's interesting. And then if you lose that, can you then go to a higher court?
I can, but it has to be based off of like a violation of one of the laws or statutes or the way that the judge applied the law to make the decision.
So are you keeping the same attorney? And is that attorney agreeing to bring in all the witnesses that she didn't bring in before?
Yes. If I wish that I could afford private counsel. Unfortunately, right now, my money is actually going to helping my mom and my son's godmother appeal the custody decision against them because they went without counsel, and I feel like they railroaded them. Like it just, we were not expecting that. We thought it was going to be easy. Like, hey, why can't we have them? We have everything he needs, and that was just not good.
Wait. You thought they were going to be fair?
I thought they were going to be fair. Yeah.
Darren, why do people think this system is fair? Why is that?
ignorance, lack
Because
of
they don't pay attention enough to this show, I guess, to understand that the courtroom that we're going in to play this game isn't even a courtroom that Mr. Davis learns about in law school. This is a whole nother might as well be another country. People need to stop thinking that America's here to help us, because if they're here to steal our kids, then that should be proof enough that they're not. They're not. You can wait all day long for Superman and the Justice heroes to come blazing through and save you at the end of the day. And that is the problem. Like Mr. Davis says, you know, a lot of us don't even seek counseling. We don't seek help. We don't, because you're like, there's no way. There's no freaking way that they're going to let this happen. This is asinine. They don't care. What do they say? This court that we go to isn't for laws and truth. It's for liars and hearsay. I think that's kind of what they what a lot of people realm about this. This just not. And like Mr. Davis says, with the rules, the laws, there's nothing that he's even learned in his law school and all of that stuff that even taught him. He had to learn. He had to relearn his entire career going into these things. So I mean, it's crazy.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that's something they
Hold on. Is Deepa having a spasm attack, or is she raising her?
I'm raising my hand. And I was trying to chase this bug out of my car. You mentioned that you had two children, but what, you lost your rights to only one, or?
So my daughter, she was placed in her father's custody. Which I'm grateful, because I'm not, you know, I don't have the contact I would like with her, but, you know, at least I'm not like the potential of losing my rights to her. Unfortunately, my son's father was out of state, and he's an illegal immigrant, and they're using his status against him in this case. Even though he was the non-offending parent, they, you know, made him follow a case plan, even though he completed it. Judge was using some of his past crimes that led to him being deported, and brought up, well, what if you get deported again? And yeah, they're just using his status against him, even though he is working
How old
with
was
an attorney.
How old was your son? I'm curious. Was he young?
When he was removed, he was 3. He just turned 5 on Monday.
Yeah.
Actually.
So the foster parents probably had adoption on the table since day one, and wanted to
Yeah,
let
they
you
had.
believe that maybe you were going to be reunified. But, you know, with my situation, that's unfortunately what ended up happening. And usually I feel like that's a lot of the cases when these foster parents have adoption on the table instead of the reunification like they should be in the beginning. It's like then these social workers just kind of on the sideline are working with these foster parents to have adoption be the ultimate end, even though, like you say, you in your mind have proven yourself enough, which I think you have too. But then again, it's like they win because they know these foster parents are wanting to adopt. That's what I feel.
I definitely think that them having a pre-adoptive home, and that they've expressed a strong desire to adopt my son, is, you know, that's one of the things that the judge like stated, like if they're,
Which I think is just so wrong from all avenues. I really do. That is like literally the definition of stealing your children from you. I
yes,
really do
they're
believe that.
legally kidnapping. They're legally
How is that?
Exactly.
How is that? But how is that not interference in reunification services? Which I know that is against the statutes and the rules. That the foster families or the host families or whatever you want to call them, they are not supposed to interfere in reunification services. And by that, meaning that they're supposed to abide by any sort of visitation that the judge asks for, any sort of help getting services to the biological parents. Correct me if I'm wrong, right, Mr. Davis? Like, isn't that like a pretty staunch rule that they are supposed to be in support of the family unit, not anti?
No, you're absolutely correct, but it gets back to, you know, the same old, same old. Are we going to talk about what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do, knowing they're going to do it anyway? What does that do? Nothing.
They
Nothing.
also wrote a letter to the judge imploring him to terminate my rights, and they were part of what led to me losing my visitation. Well, I don't know the law, but I know that they told me that it's policy that once the goal is changed, that they do eventually stop visitation. I thought that wouldn't happen until like if they approved the TPR, but they stopped my visits after the goal was approved. And but they said they were going to consider letting me continue seeing him just because our visits were, you know, like they were positive. They thought they were good for him, and because of all the progress that we were making at that point. But they changed their minds somewhere along the way, and I found out it was because the foster parents were feeding a bunch of information to the pediatrician that our visits were harmful to him because he self-harmed afterwards. maybe that's because he misses us. Maybe it's because he doesn't understand what's going on and he's frustrated. There's a reason he would literally throw himself on the floor when the foster mom would come to take him away from me, and why they had to pry him out of my mother's arms on our last visit.
Absolutely.
How old is
You
he?
got that goodbye visit?
I got the goodbye visit. I refused to
Yeah,
call it
it's
that.
just
I
so
refused to cry.
sick. I know.
Now it
I didn't
breaks
even
my heart
go.
thinking that
I
may
did
have
not
been
go.
my last visit.
I wasn't allowed to go. I wasn't allowed to do it in
I think
person.
that's so inhumane to even have something called that.
I agree.
How can you say goodbye
45
to your
minutes.
child?
Oh, thinking about it makes me want to cry.
I know. Believe me, I've been there. But Mr. Davis, I think, asked you a question about how old your son was.
Yeah, he was 3 when they removed him. I did get to participate in his birthday last year, so I have that happy memory. And then he was 4.5 when the last time I saw him. He just turned 5.
Well, you know, Mr. Davis had a client once that held on for 5 years. And after the end of 5 years, they won their fight and they got their child back. So don't ever give up hope and don't give up your fight.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
we're
Your
all trying
appeal
to
kind of sounds a
listen,
lot more hopeful
we're all doing a
than
lot
what
of things backstage, you know, trying to get laws changed and all of that, those sort of things. I don't know how often you're watching us or what you're listening to, but Mr. Davis is running the gamut, trying to put together enough people to get in here in November and push for new laws.
Mr.
And new
Davis, are you
legislation.
typing?
I don't know what that crispling is, but it's definitely,
It
I've
sounds like
muted
a
him. It's not
typewriter.
me.
yeah, I've decided
It
that no
stopped.
matter what happens, I
Oh,
want to keep fighting this thing. Like, I don't want to just, I don't want to say I'm tired. No, I want to keep fighting. Even if I don't get the result that I want, I know I'm not the first, nor will I be the last parent to go through something like this, and it's not right, and something has to change. It's just not right. And it's so like disheartening because you feel like you're going against this powerful entity that you're like David going up against a giant. Like it's just it's scary sometimes. I have tried
your appeals process, though, sounds a lot more hopeful than in California, yours sounds different, like Mr. Davis was saying. If you get to bring in new evidence and stuff, I mean, don't, completely shut yourself out and say that, you don't still have a chance, because it sounds like maybe you do if that's the case.
And you know what?
So.
Good for you for getting yourself clean and getting yourself right by that. Don't you even cut yourself short for all the hard work you've done for this. Don't ever forget how hard you've done and what you've worked for. And you know what? Relapse is going to happen.
They really made me second guess myself. There were times where I thought maybe my son is bad. Maybe they see something in me that I don't see. Like maybe there's something wrong with me no matter how hard I worked. But I realized that that's not true, thankfully. And that, I did what I needed to do. I feel like I've left no stone unturned. I've made complaints to the ombudsman. There is something going on there, like a informal investigation, which is something. Because they overlooked my mom as a placement option, which really bothered me. Like she's been like part of my son's life from the beginning, has a huge bond with him. And really, like if she hadn't gotten sick, which of course I do not blame my mom, I'm just saying if like she hadn't been in a position where she couldn't supervise me, they wouldn't have been able to take him from me. And so when she got out of the hospital and she was no longer on oxygen and all these things, I don't understand why they chose to not look at her as a placement option, claiming, oh, well, we're concerned about her health and we feel that she wasn't really protected because she knew you had an addiction, like, and she didn't get any help and all that. But they never wrote anything in writing, and they never told us about an appeals process, that there's like the Virginia Office of Appeals and Fair Hearings, which the ombudsman shared with me, that they were supposed to give us something in writing and give us the steps on how to appeal. I was told by my family engagement specialist that the decision was final, that there was no appeal, and there's nothing she could do to change it. We were also told that she probably couldn't file for custody because she probably wasn't going to get it. She was denied custody, but that wasn't true, that she couldn't file. I was told the same thing with my dad when they denied him for the ICPC, that because he was denied, he couldn't file for custody, which is not true. But of course, he was denied. The godmother was denied. They denied everybody. Like, you can't tell me that everyone in my family is incapable of caring for my child. Like, it's just.
Wasn't your mom also, you said, had shared custody with you? when
Yes,
this
which is
started?
why I was super surprised. I'm like, she literally was granted custody by a judge. You guys approved her to supervise me. How do you all of a sudden say that she wasn't, between her getting sick and leaving the hospital, now you say she wasn't protective of my son?
Hmm.
None of it really makes any sense to me. And then with my dad, it was that he didn't have a significant bond with my son, and this what bothered me the most is the lack of knowledge of his special needs. My dad sat there on the stand and named everything that my son has going on with him, every surgery he's ever had, like every therapy that he's in. The only thing he didn't mention is his newest diagnosis, because it's new, it was a new discovery. And they claimed that because he already had a child with special needs, that he wasn't going to be able to handle it. And I think it just speaks to his experience, and the fact that, he's going to know what to expect. And because my little brother is thriving, he went from being nonverbal to, he'll talk your ear off, and he's doing exceptionally well. And I feel like that should have worked in his favor rather than against him. But like I said, the judge just kind of had his mind already made up. He wasn't willing to place him with any family member. CPS wasn't willing to place him with anyone else. The only thing they were looking at was keeping him with the foster family and allowing them to adopt. And now they're saying that they're not looking at any other placement options, which I don't understand how they can do. If the goal is adoption concurrent with relative placement, don't they still have to consider like relatives as placement options?
In California, they don't if the child's been with a foster parent for that long an extended period of time. And that's why I tell people, especially relatives, that you have to come forward early in the case to get the kid. Because what a lot of people will do, I see this a lot. The relatives come forward and the social worker says, okay, we'll check you out. Time goes on. Okay, we're checking you out. Time goes on. Don't worry, we're checking you out. Looks good. Looks good. Time goes on. Oh, you know what? This looks good. There's this one problem we're investigating. Time goes on. Next thing you know, we're at the 9-month or 12-month date. And when the relative finally figures out that they've been bamboozled by CPS, they go get an attorney like Davis. They make their motions. And you know what the judge says? Oh, you waited too long. The kid already has a bond with the foster parent. We're not going to move the kid. But when the relatives comes early into the case, everybody looks at them like, what are you doing? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you butting your nose into this? But if they don't, they're going to lose the kid. Look, I haven't seen it all, but I've seen a lot of strategies used by CPS. And, I think somebody should write a book about it. And it should be written by a social worker, a former social worker. I know a woman who is a social worker for a law firm, a private law firm, for court-appointed attorneys. She used to be a CPS social worker. She left because she couldn't take it, what they were doing. And some of the things that she's told me, it's incredible. It's incredibly smart and manipulative how CPS can operate. You just don't know. Like we were talking yesterday, Brian, you think your government's going to be fair with you. You think that. You really think that. And it's such a bad thing. Before I came on the show tonight, I was talking to someone who's being investigated by CPS. And the person decided to talk to the social worker, decided to let the social worker talk to the children, and decided to talk to the police, all without a lawyer. Now, the CPS looks like they might take the kids away from this parent. And the parent says to me, I saw your videos and you said never talk to the social worker without a lawyer. But I thought since I didn't do anything, everything was going to be okay. right? As if that's my government. They're not going to screw me.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought that if I just complied, that it was going to be fair. I just made every effort that they were going to really fairly, give me a chance. Same with my mom. Like, I thought, there was no reason why they shouldn't and they should deny her, but they had their reasons. They just, weren't, for the right reasons.
I honestly feel like it's because the foster parents wanted to adopt.
I
That's
think they
exactly
went.
what I feel like happened in my case. Because if I didn't have them wanting to adopt for my youngest, technically, I feel like, let's just say if the foster parents were so for reunification and they chose to just be a legal guardian, I would still have my rights and maybe be granted more time, like, or be able to terminate the guardianship later down the road. Because my mom has my two older boys, and she didn't want to adopt. She was willing to just be a legal guardian. So because she's willing to be the legal guardian, I still have that option to terminate the guardianship and, have my kids back and I still have my rights. But because these foster parents wanted to adopt my youngest, they get to ultimately make that decision because they want to adopt and therefore now I lose my rights. And that's it. Now I lost a child. And I honest to God feel like because they wanted to adopt, that's why they went that route. That's what I feel like happened with this situation. If these foster parents were willing to, just be the guardian and technically, not terminate your rights, I feel like that's maybe what would have happened because they wouldn't have had a choice. But these foster parents that go into these situations of, supposedly fostering kids while they're supposed to be, being reunified with these biological parents, I feel like are not doing it for the right reasons, obviously.
Yeah, I
And the
feel.
foster parents of my situation, they couldn't have kids of their own. And it just so happened to be that my son was their first placement and they got him, brand new, 1 month old, healthy, beautiful. And then that's what they used against me too. Now, fast forward 2 years, now the bond that he has with his foster parents, it would be more detrimental to break that bond, they said, than to return him home to his biological family. It's
I'm
just
really sorry.
sickening how much these foster parents get to, be the ultimate, I feel like, decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, they went in with the mindset of foster to adopt. I know that 100%. I know that they also can't have kids, and they came very, very close to adopting their last placement. And they talked all the time about how heartbreaking it was to have come so close and to have lost that child. And I completely agree. I feel like if they were willing to just be, guardians and just have guardianship of my son, that things could have been differently. Or at least like someone that I know who's in a similar situation, they did TPR her, but her child's foster parents are willing to, just have that guardianship and give her time to then come back and prove herself and get her rights back, hopefully have them reinstated, especially since they wouldn't have been adopted yet. I don't have that luxury. Like, they are so against me, really kind of caught me off guard and bamboozled me. Like, I'm talking about praying with me, crying with me, seeming like they
Oh,
felt
that was
so
exactly my situation.
changed,
Ours
giving
took a
me a
360 right, like at towards that part where we were going to be facing TPR. All of a sudden, then they're filing de facto parent status so that they can now be present inside the courtroom for the rest of the hearings. And they hired their own personal attorney to represent them. And they were calling my son literally their son, as in, we need to hurry this up so that we can, keep our son. And I'm just the sickness of these people's minds and the thought of them going forward and now continuing to raise my child to be loser. Oh no. But yeah, I don't want to keep talking because Mr. Davis might have some more valuable information for you. But I just feel you because I feel like our situation is very similar.
oh no.
Mr. Guai, any comments, questions?
No, the only comment I have is because this is all the same thing that we hear, and good luck to you. But you know what? Stay solid for you. Congratulations for being strong through this. That relapse, it happens. Excuse my language, but that's all part of it. Just keep working on yourself, staying strong, because without you being number one, your kids can't come first. So you know what? You just keep showing them that you're responsible, and you keep showing them that they're wrong, and you just keep staying positive within yourself, and you'll get through this, and
Thank
it
you.
will hopefully work out in your favor. So good luck and stay strong to yourself.
Maria, keep us posted, okay? And
I'm
I don't
sorry?
think we have a captain. I don't we have a captain in Virginia. How would you like to be our CPS captain?
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Okay. Grace, if you're there, Grace, the producer, will contact you.
Where's your sound effect, Darren? No sound effect? Just a quad?
No more sound effects till I get the new
Modem.
whatever it is that I got to get.
All right, Maria?
All right. And what exactly is a CPS captain?
Darren,
Big responsibility.
please explain.
So you as the CPS captain are going to be responsible for locating and acknowledging who your state senators and so on and how your things go. So make yourself out a flow chart, like your governor, your senators, representatives. And then what you want to do is next take those, find out information about them. That way you can be valid in what you tell everybody about, because what you're going to be looking for are the people that are coming up in the next election, people that are representing your state that are for the family, for the Constitution, for what we're looking for to fight. That way people are educated on who these people are and trying to work towards changing the laws or changing the statutes or changing whatever. But we need to have people that are on our side and feel the same way. So that's where we're starting, is right there, is just getting yourself familiar with who you have in your state and who is up and coming that, so if I don't know, if Nancy B is going to run against Joe A, if Joe A is staunch on Title IV funding and all of this stuff, well, we know we want Nancy A, so we'll support Nancy A. And then what Mr. Davis has said is now you being the state captain, you're going to pick 5 more captains to be under you. So it will be like, in essence, a flow chart of getting people educated in areas so that we can get them. And then maybe even we'll get it so big as to, get people out, and maybe we'll even be able to help them get to the voting booths. Who knows how long, like we got a few months to build this thing. But in essence, you're up here. You're the top part of this pole. So, we'll get that going, and then Grace will keep you updated about, what we're doing and the changes. And then I think Mr. Davis is we're going to start doing like a show a week or something like that, where we were talking about working, like getting all the specifics together for everybody and pulling this whole thing together. So
That's awesome.
that's my spiel on this thing.
Love to be a part of it.
I think I found the offender of the noise and squeaking. Maria, I think it's you.
Oh, is it me? Okay. I think it's because I had my
I'm so stressed when this stuff happens and I think it's me. I'm like, oh my God, it's me. He's going to yell at me.
I tried muting myself too because I thought I was going to be the guilty one.
I know. Yes.
Well, now the
right.
show's over.
Maria, thank you for joining us. And Grace will be calling you about Team Captain. And we're going to have you back on the show as well. And maybe you can be a co-host. Get that sound fixed.
Okay, I'll
Yes.
definitely do that.
All righty. Talk
Thank
to you
for
later.
having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Maria.
Can you imagine that this lady lost her kids?
It's ridiculous.
I'm looking at her thinking, how could she possibly be a risk to kids?
I know it.
No.
So sweet and so.
We don't know everything, we don't know the whole story. But I'm looking at her thinking, how is this possible?
But it sounds like the only reason why they used against her is because of possible relapse in the future, or her change of being sober and being, compliant was not good enough, or like you said, substantial. Like, what?
I'll bet you, and if I had money to bet right now, but I don't, because I got to get you guys headsets and things. But I'll bet you that woman's, if she even has a problem, I'll bet you that she got hurt at one point in her life, and I'll bet you that she was put on pain pills, and she didn't get introduced to this on her own. I'll bet you $1 million that woman probably was prescribed something, and then it escalated from there.
And then, good Lord, she lost her sister in the midst of it, and then her mother being in the hospital.
So
It's just,
I think it was it Michael, the guy from up here, right? The guy from Boston. Didn't he say, like, life happens to people? Like, you're going to go into a courtroom and they're going to take this section of time and say, like, okay, life happened. That doesn't mean that life's going to continue to happen for these people. You know, like they need
That
to.
that was Kevin
How can they
Seaver.
predict the future?
Kevin,
Yeah.
sorry, Kevin. Yeah.
Kevin Seaver.
I mean, do you ever use that argument, Mr. Davis, where you're like, hey, you know, life happens. Like, let's, because I know you know like what we're talking about and what they say. Like, well, in 6 months this could happen again or whatever.
You know, sometimes I do, but I try to make my arguments, you know, based around the facts of the case. You know, because if I say, "Hey, life happens," the judge may think the worst, and I'm thinking the best, and there's no meetings of the minds, right? So
Right.
I try not to make such broad statements. Broad statements sound good on the internet and on these shows, but when you're in the trenches trying to prove something,
Right.
you want to tighten it up.
You got 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds to make the most prolific argument you can of your life and use the
Mhm.
proper everything. So, I mean, that's got to be tough too. Just that pressure of knowing that you have only so much time to argue, you know, like, and
Right.
I mean, that's got to be awful. I mean, how much stress do you get knowing that someone's situation, their life literally is on your hands every day when you're in that courtroom? Like, how much pressure and stress is that on you? Or is it you can put it away and just go home and it's your job?
You know, it may be stress at the time I'm in court. Um, I'll give you an example. It happened today. I did a case. I was online in Las Vegas, and it really appeared that I was, you know, going down the drain. But you know, I kept arguing it and arguing it, and finally, the judge decided that I could. All I wanted was to have a hearing, an evidentiary hearing for a relative who wanted the kids placed with them. And as it turns out, I think the judge thought that if she didn't give me a hearing, I would appeal. And there might be a strong possibility she could be overruled, right? But if she did give me a hearing, she could go ahead and find my evidence non persuasive and rule against me. So I think I argued enough to convince to have a hearing. Now I got to figure out how to win that hearing. Um, because today a lot of things came up that I, of course, didn't know everything, the extent of everything. You know, how sometimes you talk to a client and tell you A, B, C, D, and then you find out it's really C, D, E, F, G. You know,
Right.
and those are
Yeah,
always,
big Z over here. Right.
you know, it's always good to be able to think on your feet. And I had a local counsel who used to work with me, and uh, she's in that courtroom a lot. And even the judge mentioned that attorney appears in front of her a lot. And I thought, oh, great. And she even jumped in and made an argument for me based upon things that they do in Vegas in these certain types of
Jennifer
things.
Honey, or what was her name? Or no?
No, I'm not going to mention her name.
No. Oh,
Damn it, Deidre.
there I go again.
Little
I need to
makeup
be a
and off
better
she goes.
listener.
Having a wonderful story, and it's like the sister that ruins Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
God.
your husband, Deidre, must be a saint.
You already told him that.
Oh,
Oh
I'm
my
sorry.
God,
What
when
was
I
it?
told
Saint
him that
Clark?
too.
Was he Saint
He
Clark,
ran
right?
with that for a few days. He kept
What's his
telling
name?
me, who
What's his
am I,
name?
Saint
What was
Calvin?
his name? What's his name? Saint Clark or what was it?
Calvin. Saint
Saint
Calvin
Alvin.
now.
Saint Alvin.
Calvin.
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 I got
Yes.
Calvin Klein jeans on. Supposedly they're Calvin
He
Payne.
ran with that for a good few days. Look, I don't need to remind him neither.
Should have Grace call him. Right there. There it is. Bring the pain.
Oh, Lordy. Hey, my last name is Pain for a reason. I'm a pain in your you know what. Where did everybody else go?
It says it right on your shirt, pain in your sass.
No, that doesn't say pain.
No,
Oh,
it says
SAS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd everybody else go? Take me off the big screen.
Oh,
We
I
were
see
all-
Morrow in Carson
we were
City.
all-
Yeah, now there's crazy people walking in the back alley where I'm parked. It's getting late. Gotta go.
Yeah. You know what? They're probably like
Orange
they're
County
honing in
for
on
you.
you because they're honing in on you because they're watching Davis's show. They're like, whoa. Because see, when I put mine up on my Facebook channels, I put I'm at Vincent Davis's office watching whatever. And actually Connie was watching the other day. I had tagged her with us. And I've been speaking with her, and I keep reminding her that you want her
her presentation.
her presentation. She's so excited about that. She thinks it's great.
Is the attorney from New York going to be on the next seminar? Michael, whatever his last name is.
I don't know. I have to contact him, or have Miss G contact him. She and he have some type of friendly relationship. I don't really.
Okay, well,
I've only talked to him a couple times.
he's
as
just
I-
one of those characters that gets you real hyped up and, ooh.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Oh, wipe the sweat from your brow, Deidre.
No, seriously, did you watch the show when he was on with Mr. Davis?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, you should know what I
I
mean.
think I was in trouble.
It's like
I think
Mr.
I was in
Davis,
trouble
but
that day. I was uninvited. I was in the reprimand section.
Grace just said he said he can't do it.
ah, well, the friendly relationship, Miss G, yeah, she needs to do more work.
Or we need to find somebody else in New York.
Yeah, we can do
Yeah.
this. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Hey, do you
Did
see
you go
all
back
the
to Orange County today,
have you
Mr.
looked at all
Davis?
the clips? Have you looked at all the clips that I do, Mr. Davis? Do you see the little clips that I make and I put up?
Uh-uh.
You don't ever
What
see
Where are
it?
they at?
I put them on my they're on my Facebook, but they're on Fight CPS Facebook. So all the times we make fun of each other and the serious things too, I do little clips from YouTube, and then I'll put them
I
up
need
there.
to find your Facebook and add you.
Can you text me a link to your Facebook?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I'll text.
Yeah,
it
me
to you.
too. You know, with all those emails that I'm supposed to get.
And Deidre, I've been having internet issues.
Oh Lordy, blame it on something.
Yeah, so come to find
Text me
out,
the link
after my
too.
wife literally was on the phone today for another 6 hours, we found out that we need the new where the internet comes into the house and then disperses. We need a new one of those. It doesn't work. Not the router,
router?
the modem or whatever, modem router or something. The important part. That's why I've been having so much lag and issues. We're literally getting like 46 megabytes per second or whatever. It's not even close to 1,000 that we're supposed to be getting.
Are you on your Walmart, whatever you said, $600
I am. I'm on
computer?
the all-in-one,
It works
HP.
quite all right.
I know. I can't believe this picture's beautiful. I can hear you guys. Everything's. Who would have thought?
Oh.
I got worded.
Mr. Davis looks like he's bored and wants to go.
Yeah, he wants to slap
We're
us.
over the time. We're over time, and we will see everyone.
Time for dinner.
Everyone tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Good night, you guys, and thank you for joining me tonight.